Hello again, Blanche. Welcome to my DPS list for the Wing Diver class. Something you may notice about this class is that she has an offensive amount of damage. 120,000 damage per second. You will notice that many of her weapons are in the 5 digits of damage. And if you were, say, a Jealous Ranger class, you may say, "But that ain't fair, Mr. Kevin EDF." But you have to remember, Mr. Ranger, since Wing Diver class is the slowest class in the game, I mean, it's not like she can fly. She's even slower than Air Raider, most people would say. This makes sense to give her the most damage in the game. But Ralph Ranger says, "Mr. Kevin EDF, Miss Wing Diver has a shotgun that has 100 projectiles. They are explosive, and it does over 15,000 damage per second, with no reload." Ralph Ranger, I think you are just jealous. Remember, Wing Diver is the slowest class in the game. It's not like she can fly. So let's go ahead and cover the DPS list for the Wing Diver class. And Ralph Ranger, it is best if you don't watch this video. Just go watch your cartoons. We already talked about this earlier. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to cover the highest DPS in each column of the DLC and the non-DLC, and then at the very end I'm going to rank them from the highest to the lowest DPS, so you can kind of get a feeling of what the highest damage for Wing Diver is in this game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And this was a little bit more tricky because you have to take into account the laser, which is a little bit more tricky to do, which I'll explain later how I did it. And also just, there's no reload time, there's charge times. And I do have 2 numbers for each of the weapons so that it takes into account the level 78 item. So with 200% weapon charge speed, what this does is, it doesn't make the weapon fire faster, but what it does do is it cuts the charge time in half. So I will, like I said, put the 2 numbers, so the one is without the 200% and one is with the 200%, just to let you know the difference between the damage numbers that way as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the formula I'm using, once again, to find the DPS is I take the total magazine and multiply that by the damage, and that equals how much total damage would be if you fire the whole magazine. Then you take the magazine and divide that by the fire rate, and then you take that time and add that to the reload time, or the charge time, whatever is the weapon, and then that equals the total time. And then last of all, you take the total damage, divide that by the total time, and that equals the damage per second. It is a little trickier with Wing Diver because of the charge time and being some decimals, but I was able to figure it out, so yeah, that's how we do it. Now for the Mag Blaster, what I'm going to do for the formula for this is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that you reload after 25% of the magazine is fired, because the damage fall off is so high, that is when you're going to have to practically reload every 25% of the magazine. And then on top of that, since there's damage fall off from the first bullet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 85% of that total damage instead of 100%. So say the magazine is 100, I'm going to figure in my formula that the magazine is actually only 25, and then you reload. And then say the total damage is 1,000, I'm going to change that to 850 because of the fact that there's damage fall off as soon as you fire the laser. So that's how I'm going to figure in the Mag Blaster's DPS in this list, just to make it more practical, because that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to reload after 25% of the magazine is fired. Also, as a side note, for the Monster Sniper Rifle and for the DLC Lance, I'm also going to figure in the actual damage number, not the damage that it says on the stats, because the damage does fall off for the Monster Sniper Rifle as well. So I will figure that into the DPS list as well. Alright, let's get started. Also, if I could ask a favor, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, as a thumbs up will help more people find the video, and it took a long time to make, so I'd be very much appreciated. Alright, so we're going to talk about the first column here, and of course, no surprise, the Phalanx DLC is the highest damage per second DLC. As I said before, the 2 numbers mean that the 89,006 damage is without the 200% charge item, and then the 103,000 is with the 200% charge item. I give that weapon a practical rating of 10 out of 10, because it is very useful just because of the obscene amount of damage, so I would not see a reason not to take this weapon, honestly. And then the Dragoon Lance would be the non-DLC highest DPS. This weapon is substantially higher when you have the 200% item because it's a single round magazine. So any weapon that has 1 round magazine, the 200% charge time is going to take it's going to affect that number a lot more. So that's why it's double. But as you can see, the damage is ridiculous. I give it a practical rating of 10 out of 10 as well because of the fact that the range is so high on that. It's almost like a sniper rifle, a mid-range weapon, a close-range weapon, pretty low energy as well, so it's just an amazing weapon overall. Now let's talk about the other contenders. Alright, some of the top contenders. As you see, I have a lot of numbers here because just this first column here is such a high damage dealing column that I wanted to include a lot of weapons here. Because they're so remarkable, all the numbers are, you know, in the 7 digits. Sorry, 5 digits. So the DLC, of course, no surprise, the rapier. The DLC rapier is in the top. The next one would be the DLC lance, which even though there's damage fall off on the lance, it's still very high up there. And the spark whip isn't the greatest damage dealing, but I do like the weapon. It's good for crowd control and very low energy cost. But as you can see, the lances this time around are amazing, so I definitely would recommend giving them a try if you haven't, because they're just so ridiculous. Even the level 49 Dragoon Lance does 18,000 with the 200% item, or almost 10,000 without 200% item. And then of course even the 61 is amazing as well. And then as you can see, a weapon like a rapier that has a huge magazine is not going to be affected so largely by the 200% item, so that's why you can see there's hardly any difference there. But and the phalanx as well doesn't get affected too much by the 200% item, but the lances definitely do. They almost get doubled. So yeah. Now let's move on to the next column. Oh yeah, before we move on, let me show you just this DLC phalanx, how it tears up these big guys in less than a second. It's actually absolutely disgusting. I feel so dirty watching this that I just have to go take a shower and change my underpants, because look at this. That is just not fair. What were they thinking? Anyway, let's move on. Alright, on to the laser column. Like I mentioned before, I'm taking to where you reload every 25% of the magazine is down, and then also 85% of that damage. So, the top DLC is no surprise, the Mag Blaster. It's not too bad DPS. With the reloads included, it comes in almost at 10,000 with the 200% item. And as long as you stay on the ground with that DLC Mag Blaster, you can stay. You can keep that thing reloaded constantly. So it's not impossible to have it constantly reloaded after 25% of the magazine. And then a surprise to me, the non-DLC top laser is the Destroyer Blaster. This thing is actually pretty decent. It almost does the same damage as the DLC Mag Blaster. Of course, it has less range, but the only reason I give it a practical rating of 3 out of 10 is because of the fact that it costs so much to reload that you're going to have a tough time using it if you reload after 25% of the magazine is down. And just because of the lances are so much more practical and better, that I just give this weapon a 3 out of 10. But however, if her weapons weren't as strong as they were, the Destroyer Blaster would be actually a pretty decent weapon, which kind of surprised me. And then, like I said, the DLC Mag Blaster, I give it a practical rating of 7 out of 10. The reason it's so good is because of the range, over 300 meter range, and there's no damage fall off, so it's pretty good if you can stay on the ground, like I said, the whole time. But of course, other things can outshine it in a lot of ways. So yeah, let's talk about the top contenders as well in the laser column. Alright, some of the top contenders are, as you can see, the DLC Spine Blaster is pretty decent. I like it if it wasn't for the other weapons being so obscenely high. I think the DLC Spine Blaster is pretty good. It shoots through targets, no damage fall off, it just gets shorter as you fire. So I don't mind that weapon. Then as you can see, the Mag Blaster, actually the level 79 is higher than the highest level one. And that's because the energy costs a lot higher. So that's one thing to take into effect. The Reflect 5-ways up there, which I'm kind of surprised, but that thing unfortunately doesn't hit. It's not easy to hit all its beams on one target. The level 66 Destroyer Destroyer Blaster is pretty high up there as well. And then of course the Mag Blaster W, which is also like the one that shoots 3 ways, which is good on hardest, which I actually like. On hardest, it's pretty good up there. That's why it feels decent, because it's got decent DPS. But yeah. Not too good compared to the Lance column, huh? But yeah, that's the top contenders. All right, the top DPS in the next column is no surprise the DLC Thunderbow. As you can see, the damage is absolutely ridiculous. It does almost 30,000 per second with the 200% item, which actually is pretty good with this particular weapon. And then the non-DLC, the top DPS, is the Thunderbow as well. I give the practical rating a 7 out of 10 for the DLC just because of the high damage, but for the most part, I mean, unless you want something that's good at range and you're going to stay on the ground more. I mean, it's low energy, but still, I would say it's a decent weapon. It's just outclassed by a lot of other weapons if you want to be mobile. And then the non-DLC is even less impressive, but still pretty ridiculous, especially if you want to use a 200% item. I think it's very fun to use and very good. And you don't have to charge it all the way either. You can actually half charge it to hit a bunch of ants, like crowds of ants as well. But just be mindful of the fact that the range is ridiculous, so you're going to pull the whole map if you use this weapon. So be very careful with it if it's a map you have to pull slowly. But yeah, now let's talk about the top contenders as well in this column. Alright, in the top contenders are, as you can see, the DLC bolt gun is very, very strong. I do like that weapon, but the problem is the energy cost is so high that it kind of defeats the fact that the weapon is so high damage. So, I mean, it's an okay weapon for damage, but the energy will almost drain you. The DLC lightning bow isn't too bad. I mean, it's an okay weapon, but the problem is, if you look at her lance column, it's just outshined by the lances, and that's always the problem. If they balance the lance column a little bit lower, then these weapons wouldn't be as so bad. Whereas, you know, Ranger would love a machine gun that does 7,500 a second with the range it does. But anyway, but she can't fly, so it's not like she's not the slowest class. So that's why her damage is so high. And the bolt gun, as you can see, the non-DLC one's pretty high up there, but once again, the energy cost and the lightning bow isn't too bad either. Alright, let's move on to the next column. Alright, the highest DLC weapon is the DLC Stardust cannon, and then the non-DLC highest DPS is the Stardust cannon. And as you can see, I give the DLC Stardust cannon a practical rating of 7 out of 10 just because the other one is probably better, just because it shoots straight, and it also is just a little bit... No, it's a little bit better in my opinion overall, even though the damage is very close. And then the main Stardust cannon, I give it a 9 out of 10 because it's a very useful weapon. If you haven't used it, it is an amazing weapon, one of the most enjoyable weapons, I would say, that they add to the game. But yeah, pretty crazy for sure. Alright, let's talk about the top contenders. The DLC Pulse Machine Gun is pretty low damage per second, but to be fair, that thing is a good crowd control, so it's definitely worth underground. But yeah, kind of underwhelming. I mean, underwhelming in the fact that these other weapons are so overwhelming that it's just ridiculous. Like I think Wing Diver is just so unbalanced is the problem. Like some of her weapons are so high and other weapons are just decent for a Ranger class. But anyway, so look at it. It's level 59 Stardust cannon, almost does 20k DPS with the 200% item. And also, if you haven't used a 200% item on the Stardust cannon underground, you haven't lived yet. But anyway, level 37 Stardust does almost 12k, or does almost 13k DPS with a 200% item. And then the level 20 does almost 7k. Absolutely ridiculous for the levels as well, on top of that. Then the 10-way Pulse Machine Gun is very average at best, and then the best Pulse Machine Gun, non-DLC, is very average at best. But to be fair, that weapon has a big blast radius, so it's pretty fun to use it just for the blast radius to crowd control. But yeah, I just don't understand the Wing Diver's weapon balance. It's just everywhere, up and down, but mainly up, as you can see. Alright, let's move on to the next column. Alright, for the top snipers, the top DLC sniper is the Raijin Limit, of course. It has pretty decent damage, and if you stay on the ground the entire time, you can reload the weapon as soon as you're done out of the magazine, and you'll be able to just keep firing it non-stop. I give it a practical rating of 8 out of 10. It's very good damage, but the problem is it has such ridiculous range, and it bounces off walls and enemies, so that it's difficult to use because it pulls the whole map. And then the non-DLC top sniper is the Monster Sniper, and the reason I say the Monster is because the Raijin you can only fire once. You can't use it. You can't benefit from the 200% item. You can't really benefit from shooting it over and over again. You have to wait till you're done overheating to fire it again. So that's kind of a problem. So the monster comes in, and this is also taking into the fact that the Monster Sniper does less damage over time. I have that included in these damage numbers. I give it a practical rating of 6 out of 10, mainly because it's just not as practical and as good as the Raijin. I think the Raijin's better because it does 100,000 damage in one burst, but it does do better DPS because you can fire it more than once, even with the 200% item. And then the Raijin does almost 40k with the charge up time, but like I said, you're gonna overheat yourself, or practically overheat yourself each time you shoot it, so that's a problem with the weapon. So it's a little bit in its own column for that reason. Now let's look at the top contenders. Alright, top contenders. The monster level 55, as you can see, it does almost the same damage as the highest level monster, but it's less energy, so I would say it's almost better. taking this weapon, you can shoot it more often and use the 200% and just constantly spam this thing. Then the Raijin level 36 is pretty amazing for the level, for sure. And then the monster level 18 is even better than the best closed laser, which is kind of ridiculous. And then the bolt shooter, unfortunately, is also lower than that. So, like, this is the problem. That's why I was harping about balance in one of my videos, because the balance is all over the place for Wing Diver, and I don't understand what they were doing with the numbers. But anyway, let's talk on to the next column now. Alright, on to the plasma cannons. So the best and only DLC plasma cannon is, of course, this one. It only does, with the 200%, about 4,900 damage per second. I give it a practical rating of 4 out of 10 because just other plasma cannons are just more practical and better. And then the non-DLC best one is the Plasma Fall. This thing does pretty decent damage, but the problem is it's just very impractical to use. I give it a 2 out of 10 practical rating because it's just hard to use without hurting yourself and not hitting very many enemies with it, honestly. And plus it costs so much energy. That's the problem. Alright, now let's talk on the top contenders here. Alright, looking at the top contenders, as you can see, the level 55 Plasma Great Cannon is up there, which I would say is probably one of the most practical and best cannons she has. Also, don't want to forget about the level 69 Burst Cannon. It's one of the few burst cannons I actually recommend because it shoots almost instantly and it does decent damage per second. Then is the level 75 cannon. Then the Grit Shot is actually not too bad, honestly. The Grit Shot has a decent DPS, but nothing compared to the other ones as far as the damage. And then don't forget about the level 15 cannon. It's a very amazing weapon for its low level and low energy cost. So once again, a low level weapon, it's amazing. Alright, let's move on to the next column now. Alright, for homing weapons, the best DLC one, of course, which I think is the only one, is the DLC Geist. Don't let the damage numbers fool you. This weapon is absolute filthy garbage. As you notice here, if you watch this background image or the video I'm showing, I probably hit maybe 2 targets the whole time. I don't understand the homing on it, but yeah, it's a thing. It's mainly the only thing it's useful for is using it as like a rocket launcher, where you shoot straight ahead at the enemies, and because it doesn't track until so far out in the distance that it misses its targets a lot. So I give it a practical rating of 2 out of 10, and then surprisingly the Ghost Chaser is the next one. As you can see, the damage numbers is very, very high, but the problem is it's only used for certain situations, very few handful of situations, so I only give it a 4 out of 10 practical rating. You can always beacon a target and have her stand on a building and shoot 33,000 or 16,000 DPS on one target, but it's more of a niche weapon. It's good for knocking out tadpoles out of the air because it's very accurate, but you have to just kind of use it like a burst fire. You can't just hold down the trigger because the energy cost is very high. Let's take a look at the top contenders for the missile launchers as well. Alright, amongst the top contenders, the Fenrir is up next, but the problem with that is you drain yourself so fast, even without the 200% item, that it's just not worth using. The Mirage 15 is decent damage, but of course that is split amongst a bunch of targets. The Geist D, if you haven't used the Geist D with the 200% item, once again I'll say you haven't lived yet. But one thing to keep in mind is if you use the Geist D online, I would say use it sparingly because you can really troll a lot of people and they're kind of frustrated with you. The Geist level 36 is pretty decent DPS as well for its level, and then the Ghost Chaser level 21 isn't too bad either. I will say with the Ghost Chaser 21 you can shoot that thing and not run out of energy, so it's decent for if you want to knock down purple tadpoles that are chasing you, because it's very accurate and it's just you can just knock them out of the air very easily. It's kind of like a special use for that weapon. Alright, let's move on now. Alright, for the special grenades, the Psy Blast Wall is the only DLC one, but that is the best DPS. It's not too bad, it does 6k. If you have the 200% item, you can constantly have it out, which means the 12k means you're going to have 2 grenades out at the same time, not the damage is higher. And then the non-DLC is the Heaven's Gate is the highest DPS. As you can see, it's actually better than the Psy Blast Wall. I like it for throwing above pillars just to kill pillars really quickly, or even just underground. It's very good. I do recommend giving it a try if you haven't, using the 200% item and just take 2 grenades. It's very fun and very useful actually, because you can always have 3 or 4 grenades out at once, and if you have the Gleipnir, it's very useful setup. Alright, let's talk about the other special grenades as well now. Alright, the Air to Surface is a very good grenade. I love using it, especially with the 200% item underground. It can also be used above ground. The Thunder Orb is not that great. I mean, it's okay, it's fun to use underground as long as your friends have enough health. But I tried using it on a wasp mission with a bunch of wasps, throw it in the air, and it was not impressive at all. unfortunately. The anti-air grenade is also very strong. I like using that weapon. The Final Days is okay. It's not too bad. And the Gleipnir, last of all. It looks kind of unimpressive, but you have to remember the Gleipnir is homing, so you don't have to do anything. You can just throw it and forget about it. And also, it's very cheap energy, and it's just a very good weapon overall, so I wouldn't let those numbers fool you. It's a very good grenade for wasps, or for even just for other enemies as well. Alright, now let's take a look at the final list, where we have ranked the top weapons from highest to lowest, and let's see if there's any surprises. Okay, so here's the top 15 weapons from high to low. Some interesting things that I notice are 10 of the weapons are from the first column, so the first column is very, very broken and very, very strong. Also, I noticed that every weapon is in the 5 digits of damage, and there are many more 5-digit weapons to add to this column on top of this. Another interesting thing is the Ghost Chaser has pretty good damage, but to be fair, it is split over a lot of targets. In addition to the fact that the energy draining is so fast, it's probably not as practical as it may look. Also, I find that her sniper rifles aren't in the list is kind of interesting to me. Her highest DPS sniper is the Monster at 21,000 damage per second. So her close range and mid-range weapons do more damage than her snipers. Although her snipers do 3 or 4 times more damage than rangers, so the answer is yes, as they say. Another interesting thing is each one of her columns has multiple weapons that do 5 digits of damage, except the Mag Blaster column. Man, I'm telling you, if Mr. Mag Blaster was alive today, he would be soiling his undergarments because he would be alive in a grave. Yeah, scary stuff. Also, what they did to the Mag Blasters in this game may also affect him as well. I'm not sure. So what have we learned today about the Wing Diver class? The thing is, you must understand, the Wing Diver class deals so much damage from her weapons because she is the slowest class in the game. It's not like she can fly. Oh wait, hold on. It's not like she can fly and dash through the air. Oh wait a minute, hold on. One more try. It's not like she can fly and dash through the air and also take an item that increases her dash speed by 3 times and also fly forever. Okay, that's it. I quit. We need to burn this video footage. We cannot let this get out, because I'm telling you, Ralph Ranger would be devastated. So once again, thanks a lot for watching. And remember, EDF doesn't leave a man behind. It's for real. And if you're interested in ways to support the channel, please consider hitting the join button, which is next to the subscribe button, or watching a few ads or sharing the channel with someone, as it does help financially. It's very much appreciated. Hope to see you on the next video.